Shalom, this video is about Philo, Judaeus, who's called the father of medieval philosophy, even though he lived from 20 BCE to 50 CE. Lived in Alexandria and of fundamental importance in understanding Jewish philosophy. And he's also had an impact on Christian thinking. For him, the Bible has a plain meaning, and the events really did happen. But the Torah also has a deeper meaning, telling us truths about human existence. So he's quite ready to read allegorical interpretations as well as literal interpretations into the stories. The bulk of his writings deal with the 5 books of Moses and divided into a series of 3 treatises. The first is an exposition of the 5 books as a legal code. It demonstrates the laws are in harmony with the laws of nature. Then he follows with a biography of the 3 patriarchs, whom Philo interprets in accordance with the Platonic theory as the living embodiments of the law, or the archetypes. The second is a philosophical interpretation of the 5 books of Moses, which consists of 18 exegetical treatises that parallel the first 17 chapters of Genesis, and they disregards their narrative content and really uses mystical and allegorical concepts. In the third series, Questions and Answers, he calls it, consists of questions and answers on the books of Exodus, following kind of the form of a Hellenistic commentary. He's really the first of the Jewish thinkers to argue for the existence of God, and he makes basically 2 arguments. First, that just as a human being has a mind, so the universe has a mind. And since the mind of a person controls the body, so too the mind, namely God, controls the universe. The second proof is called the teleological argument, based on design of the universe. Since there's an order and design to the universe, there must be a designer, since everything that has a design and order has a designer. In terms of God's essence, he says that God is extremely transcendental, describes God as a unity and transcends virtue, knowledge, and even good itself. Although God has no name and is ultimately unknowable, one must strive to know God, and that God is really the only object worth knowing. God fills the entire universe. Now, unlike biblical and rabbinic literature, Philo posited that it's impossible, given the deficiency of language, to know God. And Maimonides, of course, carries this on in the Middle Ages, in the 11th century. One cannot say that anything really about God, only that God is not unholy. Now, in terms of God's oneness, always talked about God having to be a complete and indivisible unity. In terms of human beings, Philo acknowledges we're composed of a body and soul. The body connects us with matter and the soul with God. But every person has to make a fundamental choice in the direction of his life. And in order to prepare for God, we have to strip ourselves of earthly bonds. And Philo talks about reaching God in stages and uses the 3 patriarchs to describe the various stages that a human being must go through. The intermediaries present themselves to the ascending soul as so many stages on the way to God, and he uses the 6 towns of refuge in the Torah as an allegorical stage system to get to God. He says in Jewish tradition there's 2 ways to get to God, fear and love, and fear is inferior to love. The only real way to get to God is to love God. He talked about creation as carried out in 2 successive stages. In the biblical narrative, the first day of creation represents God's conceiving in his logos, Greek word for speech, of the material world. And that serves as the model for the creation, which represents the other days. In terms of the question of evil, Philo says that evil is emerged from the world of matter, the consequence of the imperfection of the world. And in terms of the suffering of righteous people, he follows the traditional rabbinic thinking of his time, to argue that the righteous sometimes suffer because their righteousness is not perfect. In addition, evil may be seen as a test of a lack of faith. Now, modern theologians don't necessarily subscribe to that, but that was Philo's view. He talked about man as a moral being, and he said there are several steps in man's ethical development. At the first, several elements of the human being are in a state of latency, a sort of moral neutrality. He called it naked or medial. And then later on in a person's life, you leave the state of neutrality, and you are filled with desire, and passion ensnares your being. And there are 3 methods towards which we rise to the divine: teaching, practice, and natural goodness. And for him, teaching included the study of main subjects like grammar, geometry, astronomy, logic. The highest stage of teaching, he said, was philosophy, which divides finite knowledge from infinite knowledge. And then he said, here a person understands the only subject worthy of contemplation really for the wise is ethics. The final method with which a person can rise towards the divine, he said, is natural goodness. And he cites Isaac in the Bible as an example of good disposition. And for Philo, God exists and is unknowable. It's the challenge of human beings to develop their powers of reason in order to reach God. He did emphasize that God had a special relationship with the Israelite nation, stating that the gift of having a vision of God was given to the entire people of Israel. The revelation of the Torah was God's special gift to Israel. That was Philo's view, and some of his major contributions to thought and his view being viewed as the first of the father of medieval Jewish philosophy. I remember taking a course on Philo with Samuel Sadmel and was really struck by how many professors of religion at the University of Chicago Divinity School sat in on his lectures. Sadmel being one of the, may his memory be for blessing, be one of the scholars of Philo, because Philo did have a huge influence on Christian religion as well.